Hi, welcome to Crochet University. Today we're going to learn the chain stitch. So what you can see here is a chain stitch that I've done with a hook that's pretty appropriate for this thickness of yarn. What you see here is a chain that is much too loose, and the reason for this is because I used a hook that's way too big, way too thick for this thickness of yarn. And if you look over at this chain, I used a really small hook, and you can see that it is really, really tight. Now, you might think that tight equals neat, and it looks really good, but once you have to start working stitches into the chain, you're going to be quite frustrated, and it's not going to be comfortable. Of course, it's going to be very easy to make stitches in such a loose chain, but it's going to look really sloppy and poorly finished. So ultimately, you want to have a chain that's quite balanced, and if you hold your hook just over top of it, you can see the chain peeking out the edges. Now let me just show you, we'll go right back to the beginning in a few seconds, but I just want to show you some aspects of making a really balanced chain. All right, so when you pull the yarn through the loop that's on the hook, you shouldn't let the yarn get really tight around this hook. You should slide it up to the widest part of the hook there. Not as far as this flat thumb hold, but basically a few centimeters away from the tip. And when you bring the yarn through, you should lift it high enough so that if you're looking through the yarn, you can see my finger right now. You can see air in between. Of course, that's way too big. You should be able to see just a little bit of space or background, like my white fabric that you can see here behind the hook. So let me just demonstrate that again. So I pull up so that you can see a little bit of air behind each chain. All right. So let's go right back. Oh no, before we go back to the beginning, there's something else I would like to show you about this chain. I'm going to use the really loose one here because it's easy to point things out. So when you make a chain, you have these two strands that kind of come up in the shape of a V, and then you have a third strand that comes out of the middle. So each chain consists of 3 strands of yarn. When you have a balanced chain like this one, you can't really ever see the third chain, the third strand. All you see is these V's, and they look like they're stacked one on top of the other, or like little hearts. Okay, so that's basically the anatomy of a chain. If I flip this chain over to the wrong side, now you can see some bumps or some curved strands coming out the side, and you can see these, what are called the back bumps or the back bar of the chains. If I get this really loose chain and flip it over, it's really easy for me to insert my pointer underneath those back bars. Okay, so those parts of the chain are going to be important later on. All right, so let's go right back to the beginning of how to make a chain. So first you have your strand of yarn, and you're going to want to make a slip knot. There's lots of different ways of making slip knots. Some people use the hook itself to do it, but I just use my fingers. So I take the loop and cross it one end over the other. There's a little X, and this makes a loop. Okay, for practice sake, I'm just going to loosen that up a bit. I reach in the loop with my fingers and pinch the other yarn, and then I pull on the short end or the tail and tighten things up. And there's my slip knot. It's called a slip knot because it slides or slips open and closed very easily just by pulling on the yarn. There it's slipping open and closed. All right. Okay, so the next thing, I'm not going to get into how to hold the yarn in this video. We'll do that in another one, but I just wanted you to be able to make the chain stitch. So I'm going to pinch my tail here, which is right by the bottom of the slip knot, to hold my hook and my loop in place. And then I'm going to wrap the yarn around my hook and pull it through that first loop, remembering not to go too tight. So I'm going to slide it up to the middle of the shaft, and I'm going to loosen it just a little bit, maybe about half the thickness of the hook itself. Okay, some people will say wrap the yarn around the hook, but if you look at my hands, I'm not moving the yarn at all, I'm moving the hook. So it's kind of like I'm grabbing or taking the yarn with the hook. And then I'm pulling through. Okay, for right-hand crocheters, it's counterclockwise, and for left-hand crocheters, it's clockwise around the yarn. And to make the chain, you just keep putting the yarn around the hook and pulling through, going up the shaft and opening it. So I'll do some slow ones right now. Yarn over, pull through, slide it up the shaft, loosen it just a little tad. If you need to use this index finger to hold it in place while you move your, what I call your pinching fingers or your claws up the strand, you can do that. And there you go, you have a chain stitch. Now I would advise that you practice this over and over again. Make some chains, undo it, make some chains, undo it. If your yarn starts getting a little frayed or fuzzy, just cut that piece of yarn off and start with a fresh section of yarn. Okay, a couple other things about the chain stitch. The abbreviation that you'll see most frequently in patterns is CH or CHS. Chain, when you just need to chain one, is CH. Or if it's more than one chain, like 4 chains or 5 chains, then you'll have the CHS. And for symbol crochet, in North America and in the UK, most English countries, the symbol for the chain is a little oval shape that's white on the inside and has the outline around it. In other countries, you might see an exact little circle or even a black dot. But in North American crochet and UK and Commonwealth countries, it is an oval. All right, I hope that that's really helpful. I do have a class on Craftsy that teaches how to read symbol crochet, so we won't be getting into that in any of these videos. But the link to the class, plus some discount links, is down in the descriptions below the video. Thanks a lot for joining us at Crochet University and learning the chain stitch.